Hello, it's Lord Slaw here, coming to you with another video, and the topic of today's is the top 5 overrated episodes. So, just as a warning, this list will contain a lot of opinion, because, naturally, if it's overrated, there's lots of people which quite like it. And, just because I say it's overrated doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad episode, doesn't necessarily mean that it is indeed overrated. It's just my opinion of what I think is overrated, and I'll back that up in points. If you think I'm wrong, feel free to leave a comment and all that. Please don't make it like an entire prose because God, I hate reading through incredibly long comments. I mean, I can do a few paragraphs, but when it gets ridiculously long, it's just like I'm almost not bothered. But anyway, yeah. So top 5 overrated episodes. There are a lot of overrated stories in Doctor Who. Possibly not as many as underrated. But I think New Who specifically suffers from overration, partially due to how it's made and partially due to the fact, well, it's more recent. Pretty much all throughout Doctor Who history, the most recent thing has been overrated. Like, I remember seeing an article in Doctor Who magazine talking about how back in, the 80s, the Sylvester McCoy episodes were incredibly highly rated and overrated, as it is today. It's just natural. But anyway, let's get into the list. So at number 5 we have the 11th Hour. So I understand people like this episode quite a lot, to the point where it made the top 20 on the Doctor Who magazine poll. And while I don't think this is necessarily a bad episode, it's not one I personally enjoy, but I'm going to sweep that aside because, that's more opinion than being objective. But being objective about the story, I don't know. I mean, it does one thing well, and that's introduce the new Doctor. You have, the whole throwing out the beans, all that kind of stuff. It introduces the new Doctor. Even if I'm not a huge fan of Matt Doctor, it does that effectively, yes. We get to know the new Doctor properly. However, the second thing that this story should do, and being a new Doctor story is never an excuse for this, it should also tell a cracking story. And what clever stories such as Power of the Daleks, which just hideously got voted lower than this, it managed to intertwine introducing the new Doctor with the story. Like, it showed his new personality and what he was like through events which happened in the story. And the 11th Hour doesn't really do that. It kind of spends the first bit of introducing them, then has a bit of plot and a bit of foreshadowing, then kind of ends, and the plot overall feels a little rushed and not really memorable. And that's the problem with it. New Doctor stories should be more clever than that. It should be like Power of the Daleks. And I know I sound like I'm just wanking off Power of the Daleks, but that's because I am. It's a brilliant story, and it manages to intertwine getting to know the new Doctor and a story. That's how it should work. It shouldn't kind of almost divide up. I know that you do kind of get another Doctor in the latter half, but I just feel like the plot isn't really happening in the beginning, and that's where a lot of introducing Matt Smith is. But oh well, that's why it comes in at number 5. It's still a good episode though. Well, not my opinion, but I don't think it's bad. Objectively. I'm going to end this now. At number 4, we have the Daleks' invasion of Earth. Iconic? Hell yes. It was one of the biggest episodes of Doctor Who. I mean, it had such a significant impact on the British public, and it's fair to say that it was this episode which caused, Doctor Who to be the biggest franchise in the UK during the 1960s. It was ridiculous. Daleks, not just Doctor Who, but mainly Daleks, in all honesty. It was everywhere. Like lunchboxes, toys, cinema. You just couldn't go somewhere and not see Daleks at that point, and it's because of this story. However, much like the Web Planet in a way, it hasn't particularly aged well in the fact that back in the 60s, there would have been a wow factor because it was just amazing to see something like this on TV, whereas today, it just doesn't have quite the same impact with a modern audience. And when you get down to it and you just take even a pinch of objectivity, you can kind of see its flaws, mainly the fact that it's got quite a rushed story. The ending for Susan isn't too great, considering that I don't really buy her relationship too much with David, although it could have been worse, I suppose. And the direction, especially in the first few episodes, is so poor. I can't tell what's going on sometimes. It's actually just bad. And it's not like, oh, well, this was 1960s. Most of the 60s has aged remarkably well for, something which was made 50 years ago. Whereas this story just doesn't hold up, and people still say, oh, it's one of the greatest episodes, which I definitely disagree with, because, it's not a bad episode, and it's certainly very iconic, and we should definitely respect it and appreciate it for that, but as a story, it really isn't all that good. At number 3, we have The End of Time. So the past two stories haven't exactly been bad stories, and just to clarify, this is going to be the worst story on this list. Wow, the end of time is awful. And yeah, a lot of people still like it. It could have got higher on the list just because it's so bad, but there is actually a following of people who don't like it, but still. There's loads of people which just, completely overhype it and, so like, well let's just start with a problem. The main problem being the fact that it's ridiculously over the top and focuses far too much on the Doctor being mopey. I mean, it's basically just 2 hours of watching fucking Tennant mope. Do you want to watch that? Do you really want to watch it? It indulges so much in this to the fact where when it actually comes to the regeneration, it's just ages of him revisiting everybody. It takes forever. Why should David Tennant's regeneration get so much more attention than any of the Doctors? Is there a reason for this? It's not like this is the first regeneration. He's experienced it before, and it's treated as if it's like the end of the show. And I suppose it was Russell T Davies, but it isn't for the audience. He shouldn't make it like it is for the audience, and that isn't even the start of the problems. It's just a poorly written story. The Master's return is stupid. I mean, it's bordering on magic. In fact, no, it fucking is magic. He's brought back by magic, and he shoots electric beams out his hands like the Emperor, and he eats a burger menacingly, and it just demonstrates that Russell T Davies sometimes doesn't understand Doctor Who, doesn't understand the Doctor, doesn't understand the Master, doesn't understand the Time Lords, doesn't understand how to write a Doctor Who story, doesn't understand how to write a regeneration story, and doesn't even understand the Time War. Now, I could go in depth explaining all this for a long time, but I don't have time to do it right now. And I'm kind of sick of talking about the end of time, to be perfectly honest, so let's just leave it at that. It's an awful story. I don't get why people like it. If you like it, fair enough, but I just don't get it because I hate it. Okay? So at number 2, we have the New Who series finales. So in Classic Who, the series finales tend to be kind of on the same level as the rest of the episodes, maybe slightly amped up with the war games in Inferno. Even if it was the same, and some might consider it an anticlimax, as long as the episode was good, it doesn't really matter. However, in New Who, pretty much every single series finale just goes completely over the top, and that's kind of the main problem with them. There's a few I'm going to exempt from this, which Bad Wolf Parting of the Ways, because, it's a pretty good episode. I really enjoy it. I would enjoy it a lot more if it wasn't for the terrible ending, but I can kind of forgive it. And also exempt from this are Wedding River Song and Hell Bent and Death in Heaven / Dark Water, just because, well, I don't really see many people exactly praising them. And, they're not exactly well-liked episodes, generally speaking. I mean, I'm not really sure about Dark Water, Death in Heaven. I just see nobody talking about it, so I'll just assume it's not overrated in that case. However, the others, oh my god, they just go so ridiculously over the top and indulge in things like character exits and, the series ending. And it doesn't work for me. Doctor Who should be, quite enclosed, quite something that you can watch separately, whereas you can't do this with the series finales because they're always built up to, and then just go so far over the top, and then the endings on them are absolutely terrible. Like, seriously, they just flick a few switches and everything's better again. It's just dumb. It's literally the flick of a few switches in stuff like Journey's End. It's just ridiculous. And, sometimes they go as far as actually changing the entire makeup of the show in the case of Time of the Doctor. I think that's the name of it. It might be the name of the Doctor. One of the ones. The one which ended Series 7, where it literally has Clara being at every important point in the Doctor's life, saving him or changing his path or whatever. And, it shouldn't interfere with the show that much. And you've got like the beach scene, which is again another example of completely overindulging in an almost puke-inducing way in the exit of a character. I just don't like it. I really don't like it, and I do Who, and that's why I consider it hugely overrated. Considering that these episodes are so well liked, but I suppose that's my opinion. But I think it's a well-founded enough opinion to consider them some of the most overrated Doctor Who has to offer. Apart from... So before we get to that apart from, some honourable mentions. Now I can go on and on for absolutely ages about overrated episodes because there's a huge ton of them, especially in New Who, but I just can't be bothered to go back and watch that many episodes, and plus the video's already running quite a long time, but so let's just stick what we have and go with one honourable mention, and that's City of Death. I don't really have too much to say about this because it's actually a really good episode and I really enjoy it. I just don't get how it's like top 10 material. Yeah, it's great, but I just don't see it. I just don't see how it's that good, and it's, I don't know. I don't really have much to back up this point. I just don't see at all how it's like that much. But oh well. Please feel free to explain to me in the comments why it is. Maybe I'll change my mind. But it's a really good episode. Just don't get why people like it as much as they do. So at number one, it couldn't really have been anything else, could it? The Day of the Doctor. So in the DWM polls top 10 stories, even if they aren't your favourite episodes, you can see why they're there, like Blink, Genesis of the Daleks, Towns of Wang Chiang, Caves of Androzani, all quintessential, really good, well-written Doctor Who episodes, even if, say, Blink, for example, may not even be in my top 30, I still appreciate it as a really good episode. However, then comes Day of the Doctor. And what place does it come? Number one? Like, number one? Really? Day of the Doctor? How? Why? What is so good about it? I don't get it. I mean, it's not a bad episode by any means, but I wouldn't even say it was that good. And in fact, it has quite a lot of flaws. For a start, for a 50th anniversary special, it really doesn't involve Classic Who a whole lot. I mean, sure, it has the Zygons and has Tom Baker in the room with Matt Smith, but that's just having Zygons in an episode and Tom Baker in the room with Matt Smith. That's not celebrating Classic Who. That's just having bits which were slightly involved in Classic Who on screen with characters from New Who. That's not celebrating. And also, it kind of shits on the Time War arc a bit because I liked how Russell handled this a bit. Sometimes I felt Tennant got a bit mopey about it, but overall, it was quite interesting to see the Doctor develop around this and, getting over the Time War. Like, that was a good kind of arc. However, Moffat kind of ruins that with the fact that now, this is the story of the Time War, the Doctor was sad for a bit, then he fought the children, and then everything was better. Because it was a pathetically easy solution, and it was just a bit over the top, and it just doesn't really work for something which was built up for 8 years, then just to be resolved that easily, and meaning that all of that build up to that point now means absolutely nothing. That's just poor writing right there. And on top of it, what's so good about Day of the Doctor? I mean, seriously. I mean, think about all the other episodes in the top 10. There's really good reasons as to why they're such good episodes, like the quality of writing, the ideas reflected in it, and even some like the symbolism and the clever, subtle ideas. Where's that in Day of the Doctor? It's not there. That's what. Because, I don't know, it's just not that good of a script. I mean, if you can think of any way to tell me why it's considered this good, feel free, but I don't see it. It's so hideously overrated, it's almost beyond my comprehension. To the point where it actually boils my blood whenever I see somebody, just basically giving Day the Doctor a verbal blowjob. So please explain to me in the comments why people like it so much. I genuinely want to know. But oh well, so that's it for today's possibly controversial video, and I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you back next time in another one.